Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin of the Investor Connect. Today we're here with Hélène Thibieroz of We Grow Green Tech. Hélène, thank you for joining us again.
Hi, Al. Thank you again for welcoming me in your podcast. Yeah.
So we had a previous interview in which you talked about the green tech space and everything you were doing. And could you tell our audience about how We Grow Green Tech is progressing and what you've done since we last talked?
So I am obviously still the founder and the managing partner of We Grow Green Tech. So just to refresh people's memory, we're a boutique consulting firm. Our mission is to accelerate green technology early stage company. So since the last time we presented, it was on green technology giving a high level view. So we have further progressed in our strategy. We are now finalizing our impact fund. We have architected our portfolio around this fund. And our fund is following the United Nations Sustainable Business Goal. As some people may know, there have been 17 goals identified by the United Nations. And there's a lot of innovation in the background that needs to be accomplished in terms of impact and business solution. So we've also been engaging closely with Samsung. So interestingly, they recently announced their corporate partnership with the United Nations Development Program. And so we've been working with them to try to reach their goal by 2030 via an open collaboration and investment. So overall, life is good. We've been doing good progress in alignment with our mission.
Well, great. Well, today I understand you're working on the carbon economy and more specifically, working on carbon sequestration. Could you tell us more about it? And let's start with what does carbon sequestration means?
So first, if you think about the concept of carbon economy, it has emerged and been developed in the last few decades. So there is more and more undeniable scientific evidence that carbon emissions are impacting our planet climate. So the concept of a carbon economy started by looking at low carbon alternatives to fossil fuels, and the intent was to lower carbon emission. But with increasing population and demand for energy, connectivity, that we are now entering an era where reducing carbon emission is not enough, right? So more and more we're looking at pushing solutions to capture the existing carbon. And that becomes crucial, but also a great business opportunity. So transitioning to a circular carbon economy not only presents huge business opportunity, but also an impact. So the opportunities in terms of commercialization of new technology and solutions that we would talk a little later in the podcast, transformation of several sectors, and an impact both in terms of economic impact, ecological, and social impact. Now, if you start growing in this carbon economy, the concept of economy, the carbon capture and sequestration is a crucial piece of a circular carbon economy. So carbon capture and sequestration, you may also see it in article as CCS. It's basically being defined as a natural or artificial process by which the carbon is removed from the atmosphere and held in either solid or liquid form. So the CCS market, if you really look, gained fast traction in the past few years due to the concern about climate change. So carbon capture and sequestration will effectively remove the carbon from the atmosphere and complements our efforts to reduce emission.
So that's a good explanation of carbon sequestration and why that's important. So from an investor's point of view, what's the size of this market? How much money is going to go into carbon sequestration? And how big is this industry going to get and where is it going?
So if you look at carbon sequestration, you can look at the market two ways, right? You can look at the market size by looking at the global carbon emission, and you can also look at existing market metrics that have been released today. So if you first look at the global carbon emission estimates, right? Because that's going to be representing how much carbon do you need to remove, right? So that's basically one indicator of the size of the market. So according to a recent scientific study, the carbon emission have hit a record high of 37.1 billion metric tons in 2018. So the two largest contributors were the US and China. According to a new report by BP, the overall emission of carbon greenhouse gases has increased by 2% in 2018. So now it's very interesting because we're seeing progress, right? There's an increasing usage of renewable energy, including solar and wind. But to make meaningful progress, the renewable electricity will have to keep pace with the global energy demand that keep jumping. By the last year in 2018, it jumped by 3.7%. So what we're seeing in the economy, in the global economy today, is reducing carbon emission is not enough to counterbalance the consumer exponentially expanding need and increasing population. So creating a carbon circular economy not only becomes something we do at the global level, but a huge business opportunity. So as far as the market size, now if I start going into more metrics, the global carbon capture and sequestration market is expected to witness a CAGR of 15.7%. It's projected to reach 12.3 billion by 2024. But again, if you look carefully, the largest piece of this estimate relates to what's called enhanced oil recovery segment. And the enhanced oil recovery segment is a ternary technique method that is actually used to increase the production rate in mature oil well. So it's the method that has been seen as an acceptable way of reducing the effect of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, has been readily adopted by industry and major oil companies across the globe, but it represents only a small section. So this estimate do not include emerging new techniques such as carbon sequestration through soil, that will highlight a much larger opportunity in the next decade. To talk a little more about facts that relates to the carbon sequestration, there is some interesting facts, right, that people may or may not be aware of that are environmental facts. The carbon emission on the rise, right, we were predicting 1.5 degree. There's two new estimates that came that are now predicting by the 21st century, if we stay the same, we will reach 7 degrees Celsius. So the other one is what's interesting in terms of carbon consumption is the land is responsible for 1/4 of the global greenhouse gas emission. If better managed, it can provide more than 1/3 of the carbon reduction needed to keep the global warming less than 2 degrees Celsius. Another thing that's very interesting, because now you're linking carbon reduction to agriculture, is half of our topsoil has disappeared in the last 150 years. In US alone, the soil on cropland is eroding 10 times faster than it can be replenished. So if we continue to degrade the soil at the rate we are now, the world could run out of topsoil in about 60 years. And when you look at the impact of without not having topsoil, the planet capability to filter water, absorb carbon, and feed people crashes. And when you pair that with an increasing population, that becomes even more dramatic. And in addition to that, the last factor, which has been interesting, is not only we're losing our topsoil, but because the soil is getting more and more degenerated, right? It's losing the food that we grow is lacking more and more vital nutrients. Like you can find some scientific study that demonstrate that the food that we produce today include this 10 to 25% less of iron, zinc, protein, calcium compared to 50 years ago. So if you take the carbon sequestration of our soil, it would not only reduce carbon, right? So that would kind of blend in the carbon economy, but it will also enrich our soil, provide us with a better food system, and also have a social impact in terms of farming community. So this represents a huge opportunity because, again, if you do carbon sequestration through soil, if you consider that 24% of global soil and 50% of the agricultural soil are degraded, it means you can capture even more carbon. So this concept of carbon sequestration through the soil becomes a very interesting business proposition, right? So if you go back to the matrix that I mentioned, the at least like 12.3 billion by 2024, we're expecting this number to be much larger due to the need to capture the carbon and the huge potential benefits that the carbon sequestration will provide to the soil and to the people in general, to a food system. In addition to that, now if you want more metrics, if you look at the recent investment that have been made in this space, it's really interesting. It seems that what you see is an acceleration in terms of investment. For example, Occidental Petroleum has invested 68 million in investment in some carbon sequestration, in carbon engineering, which is a carbon sequestration company. Indigo AG has raised 650 million and is starting to grow at a large corporate rate. And Climate Corporation, for example, reached now a 1 billion valuation. So it appears to reflect a greater awareness that rapid decarbonization of the energy sector alone is not enough, and we need to invest in carbon capture solutions, right? So the concept of the carbon circular economy that was used to be kind of a high-level concept is slowly going back to a reality with more and more business solutions being developed, more and more investment getting into it.
Well, there's certainly a great deal of opportunity here with climate change growing and the entire world at risk for it. For those who are starting a business in this sector, what are the challenges they're going to face in building a company that goes after carbon sequestration?
So it's a very interesting question because that's a fascinating topic right now. So building a carbon economy is an extremely ambitious project, right? There's a lot of players that are involved. There's a lot of innovation that needs to be pushed. So first of all, it involves building a circular ecosystem between large carbon producers and business that can capture carbon. So you need to allow transaction to occur, right? So in order to have accurate transaction, you require innovation at two levels. The first one, I call it downstream innovation, or basically innovation from the source. So by that, I mean technology solution that needs to be implemented to accurately measure carbon. Because if you're going to be implementing a carbon monetary system, you need to make sure you can measure carbon accurately. And this solution will have to be implemented with farmers, forest, land managers, so it needs to be practical as well. And the other type of innovation, which I call upstream innovation, or basically innovation to bring that to reality, bring that to the market. So it means building platform involving blockchain, AI, but also a new protocol tool, because some of this innovation is interestingly based on communication protocol, and they will be part of the solution to accurately evaluate and monetize the carbon. So if I go more into innovation to kind of give people some idea about what exists and where innovation needs to be developed. So downstream innovation, it's really interesting. So when you talk about capturing carbon, right, you have two ways to do it. You can use natural resources or you can build new technology. So an example of new technology innovation, for example, there is Austin-based company called Hypergiant. They've used AI to build a prototype called the EOS bioreactor prototype. And it's a 63 cubic foot box, which is filled with algae. And they claim, like according to the website, they say it takes as much carbon as 400 trees and keep it out of the environment. So that could be a potential. I think you're going to start seeing maybe some solution being developed using technology, just as far as getting to short or medium solution to capture carbon. Now, as far as natural resources, you can capture carbon using soil, forest, ocean. So now it's called natural climate solution. There's more and more reference in the literature. So natural climate solution are estimated to contribute 37% of the necessary emission reduction. The most efficient one, reforestation. So reforestation is supposed to be the highest potential. Although the drawback in terms of innovation is that it takes a long time to grow a tree. So there's some companies that are starting to investigate how they can accelerate reforestation. There is, for example, a company based in Brazil, a company called Nucleario, that has developed a solution to accelerate reforestation. They have designed a specific product inspired for biomimicry that facilitate post-planting maintenance in reforestation project, and they're already doing it in Brazil. Another aspect, agriculture, which I think this one is the most extremely interesting in terms of innovation, covers 11% of the world land surface, is very interesting. because not only the soil, agricultural soil can capture carbon, but it could also, using this technique, you can actually regenerate soil, so have a direct impact on the agriculture system, and also enable farmers, like enabling a strong farming community based on the business solution that you created. So the challenges, especially early challenges with soil sequestration, when you start reading from a technology standpoint what's available, it was the accuracy of the carbon measurement. They were used to be extremely difficult to get because it depends on the soil variability, depending where you are, the state of your soil, various external factors such as fertilizer, pesticide, irrigation. So getting consistent metrics was difficult to get. In addition to that, if you look at the measurement techniques that were used, like they involve like ex situ method, like for example, wet digestion, combustion method. They're using spectroscopic method. Most method, while some of them being accurate, they tend to be very extremely challenging from a business standpoint to scale, right? Because they require equipment, they require expertise. So if you want to generate a marketplace with a large farming community or landowners community, you need to have a more practical solution. So an interesting solution that is being developed today is based on spectroscopic method, but it's also based on precise imaging technology through satellite, right? So by using a satellite technology, being able to capture the amount of carbon that is on the soil. So not only present huge innovation potential, but also very big business capability, because suddenly you're building solutions that are practical, right, for anybody to use. You need innovation as far as protocol communication between a satellite and the end user. So a lot of innovation are needed in this space. So if you look also at like in terms of real case, there is a company called GeoSolution that has developed already application in this field, various satellite imagery to generate information about rice, about culture. And in the term of scaling the solution, that's also what's interesting. If you look at existing innovation, you have miniature satellites called CubeSats that were originally intending for low Earth orbit that could be idealized for agriculture, for big data collection, right? So as of today, if you summarize, in terms of upstream innovation, this is the most promising area, and I think a lot of players are starting to like enter the market to utilize this capacity. Now, in terms of upstream innovation, right, which involves building a platform technology, for example, there's a company called Nori that have created a carbon removal marketplace. That's a two-sided marketplace leveraging blockchain to monetize carbon. So they make it very simple for companies to pay farmer to basically capture carbon, restore the soil health. And I think as we move forward in terms of upstream innovation, you're going to see more and more innovation involving blockchain, AI, and as I mentioned, protocol communication to further refine this technology.
Well, there's tremendous amount of innovation going on in this space, but it's also a very different space than many entrepreneurs may be familiar with. What do you consider to be the risk in this sector if it doesn't work, or what else could go wrong that could hamper a startup's ability to grow in this space?
Well, I think it's a huge project, right? It's a huge initiative, something that we have to do as a nation that has huge business opportunity, but also present many facets. So first, like the adoption, right? We need to, both farmers, landowners, corporation needs to embrace this project and adopt the solution. So it basically means the technology solution in terms of farmers and landowners needs to be practical enough to be adopted, which hasn't been the case for a few years. And now we're starting to go toward very practical technology solution. From a corporation standpoint, there are risks that the corporation are going to adopt this solution. So on that, it's really interesting because you already see company moving in that direction. BP, for example, they already has created a carbon pricing. More and more companies are starting to follow their lead. In terms of technology, as I mentioned, they need to mature for both a downstream and upstream angle. But again, you see more and more companies integrating satellite and other data to aid land and resource manager. So in pretty big name, SAP, Bayer, Granular, that belong affiliated with DuPont, Indigo AG. So more and more large players are entering this space that as we move forward is gonna lower the risk. And the last one is government, because I think government needs to start pushing carbon policies to basically help the concept of a carbon economy develop. And again, we have a United Nations, more and more policies are being in place. So I think as risks are there, the transition, the evolution is quite remarkable in the last few years.
Well, that's great. So how does your company fit into this landscape? What angle are you taking after it?
So if you look at soil organic carbon, it was recognized as part of the United Nations Sustainable Goal. So often the initiative are all aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Goal toward environment. So we are strongly interested in carbon sequestration because we see a large financial growth in the next decades in terms of business, in terms of impact, but also fully aligned with the United Nations ecological, social, and economic goal. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we started to work with Samsung. Samsung, I don't know if you've seen the press release, they announced last September they will support the United Nations Sustainable Goal. They currently have a global competition, XTC, Extreme Tech Challenge, that would include innovation in this space as well. And we were asked to help with this competition.
Well, that's great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think in terms of, I think we pretty much covered everything that needed to be covered. As far as there's already, when I did some research, look at innovation, I think it's interesting to see that there is global innovation happening in the United States, in other countries. Austin has some. So I think we covered pretty much everything.
That's great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Through LinkedIn, right? I'm available on LinkedIn. They can also connect with us on the website or connect with me by email at helen@growgreen.tech.com.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes. Thanks for having you back. It's been great to catch up, and sounds like a lot of exciting projects you have going in a very important area.
Thank you. Thank you, Al. It was a pleasure to see you again.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.